I don't think any Prime Minister in the history of this country has had to endure the multiplicity of emergencies that Scott Morrison has had to deal with. And we know he didn't get it right every time. He admitted to that on scores of occasions during that election campaign. But the frequency and depth of those challenges, well, it went hand in hand with one of the most spiteful personal pile-ons that any Prime Minister has suffered. Despite state governments traditionally dealing exclusively with floods and fires, the left hammered Morrison over that trip to Hawaii. His eagerness to spend some time with his family for the first time that year was made into a national crime, and it never stopped. When the EU pulled the plug from under Australia on vaccine agreements, well, he copped the wrath from the public on that one, pushed by the Labor leader, who then began sniffing a weakness at the top. When the Commonwealth medical team advised the Prime Minister that we needed to put all our eggs in the AstraZeneca vaccine basket, and then, of course, the vaccine fell short of expectation, not helped by a certain chief medical officer in Queensland, they nailed Morrison for that too. On access to RAT units, a month-long delay in ordering the kits added to the narrative of so-called incompetence. And let's not forget how vicious so many were when Scott Morrison had to deal with workplace behaviour in Parliament House. The pile-on just deepened. And yet, as a government, more was achieved for the safety of women in that place than any other government. The mood for change and the removal of Scott Morrison was embedded in the electorate well before the campaign was called, mainly driven by female voters. This was the overwhelming factor in this year's election. The surveys consistently revealed as much, which is why late into the campaign, the PM began to talk about his own negative personality trait.
I know Australians know that I can be a bit of a bulldozer when it comes to issues, and I suspect you guys know that too.
As much as he tried to neutralise that feeling against him, that kind of concession was never going to reverse the public's perception of him. Last night, when all was lost, he made the ultimate concession, admitting defeat at the poll and resigning as party leader. But he did it with a great deal of outward strength and acceptance. Watch this.
3 years ago, I stood before you and I said I believed in miracles. I still believe in miracles.
I've got to say, that speech, last night's speech, was just Scott Morrison pretending again, putting on a face for the role, remaining strong, pretending to be comfortable with the greatest ignominy that would face a Prime Minister, to give it all away. That was abundantly clear today when we saw the real Scott Morrison. He was at a church in Sutherland. He dropped the pretence. The steely face was removed, and he became Scott, the father and husband, desperately affected by his fall from grace.
I'm very pleased that the last thing I say as PM is here. Even if the fig tree does not blossom, and there is no fruit on the vines, if the yield of the olive oil fails, and if the fields produce no food, even if the flock disappears from the fold and there are no cattle in the stalls, yet I will triumph in the Lord.
You've got to feel something for him. Even the haters have to feel something for him after watching that. For anyone who works unhealthy hours for their country as its leader, especially someone who did pretend way too much when maybe all we needed to see and hear was the truth, what he really felt about the troubled times his country faced and how tough it was to get it right. And you know what else? I can think of many other Prime Ministers we've put up with in this country who wouldn't have handled that job at that time as well as Scott Morrison.